Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be going over how I properly grease bearings and go over brake parts and maintain axles on trailers. What you're going to need today is some gloves primarily. Your hands are going to get super dirty with grease. And some grease. You'll probably need a bearing packer as well. That's what I'm pointing to right here. And then some regular grease. You can also hand pack it as well. You'll need some seals. You'll need a plate to hammer down your seals on. You'll need some cotter pins. You'll need some needle nose pliers, a screwdriver, a bearing, a seal remover. Then you need a soft blow hammer, and you might need some bearings depending on how they look. So, first step you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to take off this cap, and then you're gonna have to undo the castle. You'll need a socket as well for taking off that nut. I use some channel locks or something similar. Anything might work. Do not pay attention on how I have this on jack stands. It's not the proper way, but I'm just doing it. That's just temporary because I'm getting new tires on this thing as well. What I also have is I have a board underneath here to protect everything in case bearings falling out or whatever else, so I don't get dirt on them. If you have a concrete surface, that's probably not going to be a problem to you. But like I said, the first step is to get this cap off. What I do, and there's probably other ways to do it, is I use a soft blow hammer and a screwdriver, maybe a smaller one, and I slowly work around the cap here and try and get it off. So get it in a little bit. You can probably see it popped out. I twist a little bit, go around, twist, 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 and try not to go in too far because you're going to damage that cap. So we got that off. Looks like it's pretty packed with grease, but we're going to make sure the bearings are all right. So the next step that you're going to have is you're going to have to take out this cotter pin. It's probably hard to see, but it's right here, and it's going to be folded over. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get behind that cotter pin and try and bend it back straight, or you can cut it off, depending on what kind of tools you got. Then you have to pull it out using some leverage as well.
See? There's probably a different way to do this, but it's my way. So we got that cotter pin out.
Set that aside or set on a towel. Same thing with the cap. Then you're going to want to grab your channel locks or something similar. You're going to want to take that castle nut off. Might be tight, might not be tight. At least they were greasing these things, because some people, they don't grease them, and then that causes issues. So got that castle nut off. You're going to want to set that aside. Next, you're going to pull out the whole hub assembly. Make sure you get a paper towel on the ground or something, everything else out of the way and ready, because when you pull this out, this washer right here and the front bearing is going to want to fall out. Easy enough. Set the washer and the bearing aside. Set this however you want it. It looks like this doesn't usually happen, but the seal right here and the outer bearing got stuck on here. Probably because the seal was loose inside there, so just make sure you have the proper size seal. So we got that out, and normally if the seal goes bad or something like that, you'll have it where the whole outside and everything inside here is covered with grease. I've seen that before. Just looking at the brake pads and the magnet right here, it's not too worn, not too bad. Pads are in good shape. They have good thickness, both sides. And this magnet right here, yeah, it's not too bad. It's not smooth, but it's not too bad. I'm looking inside this drum right here. Once again, not too bad, but not in the greatest shape. I mean, once this magnet goes out and this brake assembly goes out, then they'll want to probably replace it. But for now, we're just going to grease it. But we're also going to clean the axle and make sure that there's no wear marks. And I'm not an expert on the wear marks necessarily and how they happen, but I know burn marks can happen because there's overloading, and that can happen on either the rear bearing or the front bearing, mostly on the bottom I've seen. Make sure you get all that old grease off of there so you can see the condition. And I've seen it where there's rubbing on here. There's a bunch of different conditions that can happen. Also, I personally never use the Easy Lube axles. I never put a grease nipple on here and grease it, because how I think it happens is, so you get grease out of here, out of this pinhole, and it pushes all the grease to the front, and you pretty much fill this whole cavity. But when you have expansion of the grease, when you're driving down the road and the wheels are spinning and that grease is getting hotter over time, that is going to expand and it's going to want to push that back seal out. So what I do is I just manually grease it every time. And sure, in a pinch, if you don't have a good amount of time and you know it needs maintenance, then by all means just put it on there. But that's just the way I do it. Next step is going to be to actually grease everything. What you'll also want to do before you grease everything is you're going to want to inspect the bearing. You're going to want to dry it off a little bit. There's the washer as well. You're going to want to dry it off. Look for any kind of wear marks, burn marks, looseness, all that kind of stuff. So clean the bearing off. I don't see any burn marks. I don't see any burn marks on this bearing. It looks pretty clean overall. Every bearing's will be different. Inside looks good. On this bearing, this is the outer bearing, which is the bigger bearing on this trailer anyway. This one looks good as well. No wear marks or anything like that, unusual. All looks pretty clean. So next step you'll want to do is you want to take the cap off of your bearing packer if you have one. I just have a Performance Tool one. Pick it up, I think, at Harbor Freight or AutoZone. You're going to want to unscrew this and make sure your grease is warm. It was just 32 degrees last night here where I'm at, and I don't think I'm going to have the best of luck trying to pack this bearing. But I've used this on many bearings and it's worked wonders for me. So how are you going to want to put the bearing in there? It can be tricky. I get mixed up on it sometimes, but either if you don't get grease in it, it's going to go in. But I think you have to put the tapered end down. And then what you do is you screw this back on. Tightly. And you're going to want to press down as hard as you can. And with warmer grease, this is going to work better for you. And then you might not be able to see it, but all the old grease will come out the top of the bearing, and you can just get rid of that, and you can keep all the new grease. See if it worked. So as you can see, it might have worked. I might have not had it tight enough. But that's the general process of it. You'll generally see grease come out the top, and eventually you want to see red, so you want to get rid of all this black grease. So I'm going to do it again, and I'll show the end result. It's kind of hard to tell, but on this bigger bearing, I was able to get some of the older grease out and replaced it with the red grease. It's not going to be the most clear, but you can wipe off all this excess and put in the newer red grease. And you just know that on the inside of the bearing, it's all good. So your next step, what I do, is I'm going to clean out all this old grease in here and replace it with new grease. So I take my finger, just wipe it around on your paper towel, whatever you may have. Make sure you get the insides clear because we're going to be inspecting the races next. And people sometimes, I've wondered in the past, like, what kind of bearing should I buy? Like, does it matter where I buy it? You know, can I buy it from Amazon? Can I buy it from a trailer sales place? Yeah, you can buy it from anywhere. The brand, as far as I've been told, doesn't matter. They're all made in China pretty much, and they're all pretty much the same. So you want to get all this clean. I'm going to put this back on the bearing packer, and you can kind of see it starts to get messy. You might want a trash bin around or something like that. You want to keep the bearings on there. I'm going to grab a paper towel. I'm going to show you guys what the braces should look like. And not every case that you have to replace them, but what you're basically looking out for is burn marks and scratching and all that kind of stuff. So you can see on this race right here, the race is right there. It doesn't look bad at all. It looks pretty clean. So I'm going to keep that one on, and then now I'm going to turn it over to the other side. I'm going to do the same thing, clean it out, and then inspect it on the front bearing. And there might be different colors of grease that you can use. I always use high temp grease on anything and everything. That's my prerogative. So I never use black grease or anything like that, but the grease does turn black after a while. So this one, looking good for me. I'll show you guys. Not completely clean, but you can see that there's no burn marks and no scoring and all that kind of stuff on there. So it's good. So your next step is going to be to grab your grease and put grease back in everything. I'll show you that. So your next step is going to be to grease the hub and put grease in there, and then also put grease around your bearings. So what I do is I use my finger and I swallow some grease inside here. You're not going to want to fill it because that's just going to cause issues, but you do want to get relatively full, and keep in mind that the axles can be going through here, so you don't need to absolutely pack it. So make sure your fingers and everything is relatively clean for this because you don't want to get dirt or debris inside here. So use your fingers and just kind of turn them around and get everything coated pretty good. And you can work from this side or the other side. I usually try to work from this side because it gets less grease on the backing. And use your discretion on how much to use. Every axle and every situation is gonna be different. So I'm getting rust flakes from this hub on my hands, so you don't want to use this hand anymore. Now we got this on here. This grease is nice and tacky, especially since it's pretty cold out. It's probably 36 or 40 out right now. So then you're just going to want to put your bearing back in after you put all the grease in there. And you can just dip it in here, or you can take your finger and spread it around. And you're going to put this big bearing in. The small bearing is usually for the front. And what you're going to want to do is pound your seal in. So the way you do that, you set it in here nice and even as you can. And then you grab your plate. I use an aluminum plate. And you can use a block of wood or anything like that, but I figured it'd be more stable and less likely to put debris back into the hub. So next you just hammer down on it, check on it, see where you're at. You want to be nice and flush with this outside edge right here. It's not the best surface to do it on, it's just a plastic table, but it works. So now you got seal on here and it's nice and flush. And next you're going to want to wipe all the grease that you may have gotten on here off. Well, to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be 100%, but make sure you don't get anything back in this hub. And then turn it over. And you can do this step later, but you turn it over and you're going to put your little bearing in. So make sure you wipe your hands, especially since I got rust flakes on mine. You want to coat this bearing as well. Spread it around. And you're going to want to put it in here. And you're all set. Don't forget about that washer as well. Now, next step is to check over the wiring. So after doing just a general inspection of this trailer hub, when I was testing it, I noticed that the brakes weren't working, and lo and behold, that this wire was just dangling down right here. So what I went ahead and did is I kind of pulled on these wires right here, made sure there's space for them to move, and I pulled this one through. I'm probably going to feed this back through, or in some way, shape, or form rewire it. And it's going to be a messy job. So, and just after a general inspection, make sure all the springs are intact, and these other springs, and your magnet like we talked about before, and just make sure everything looks in good working order and nothing's out of place. You get used to it after working on a couple of them. But what I'm going to be doing right now is just fixing up this wire right here. Okay, so after all that, I tucked everything behind here and zip tied it and made sure it's nice and neat. Don't want that wire for the brake hanging down, otherwise it's gonna get all cut up and messed up again. So next you want to make sure your axle is clean. Make sure you get a cleaner rag, get all the dust off of that one, and just make sure it looks nice and clean so you're ready to put your hub back on. Sure the threads are not full of junk. I mean, they can be full of old grease, but just not junk. As you can see, that's a pretty clean axle we got right there. So now we're ready to put our hub back on. And we're going to want to hold front bearing in from falling out when you put it back in. Like this. Push that on. There you go. It's on. So your next step, very important, you need to clean out this castle nut. Just make sure it looks kind of nice. You're going to want to put the castle nut on. All the way. I spin this as well. Make sure you get it tight. But hold on, that's not it. Tighten it down. Make sure you get everything seated properly. Then you're going to want to take a quarter turn back. Use the channel locks the other way. So, and you loosen it, tighten it up like this, and you go quarter turn, or some people say a constellation back, which is one of these teeth. Sometimes it's not going to line up, so it's all upon your discretion. Then you're going to want to make sure to put the cotter pin in, and you want that loop that's on the top of the cotter pin to be on the top side. So line up the cotter pin, put it down through, and then use your needle nose or whatever pliers you got, and you make sure to bend it all the way in. And you want to make sure not to let it protrude out like this. Otherwise, I've had issues in the past where put the cap back on and then it rubs on the cap or rubs on this rubber cap right here on the cap. And it can also, I've seen it kind of push this cap out as well. But overall, just make sure you tuck it in real good. So, like that. Make sure it's like touching. And make sure it's not going to come out. So, next step is to get your cap back on. And some people also put a bunch more grease in there. Depends. But I think this hub is sufficient just based on how it is. You can get all that old grease out of the cap. And if you have issues with your cap staying on tight, sometimes you need to replace the cap because it's worn out, or some people, if they have trouble keeping the cap on, they'll take their needle nose or some kind of pliers and bend out in a couple spots to keep it on there, to keep it like serrated, I guess. And then some people squeeze it, and you probably need a vise or something like that to make it more oval so it'll stay in. But overall, you might just need to replace the cap if it keeps on falling out. Or the hub is also warmed up and it is not the same shape it was. Like if you, for example, did not put enough grease in there, or you drove at a high rate of speed that was not rated for the bearings or the trailer, then that can cause the hub to expand and not accept the same caps anymore. So you're going to want to get your soft blow hammer, and some people use a socket or some kind of PVC pipe to put around this, but I just use a soft blow hammer. It works pretty good for me. And then take the soft blow hammer and just gently tap around until it's flush. That's good. So there, the adjusting of the brakes is the next step, but that's a whole other video. It's not too difficult, but that's all. So just gotta do all these steps, and then there's multiple ways you can also do it. So, but that's it. Have a good day, guys.